The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we talk a lot about wage stagnation in the United States, and we've many times mentioned this idea that generally speaking, over the last 40 years, there has really not been an inflation-adjusted increase to middle-class wages. Now, that doesn't mean that there haven't been any changes from year to year. And according to a new report from the Census Bureau, the incomes of middle-class Americans rose in 2016 to the highest level ever recorded, and poverty declined. And it sort of seemed like it was I don't want to call it the end of the easing after the Great Recession, because so many people are still struggling and there are so many economic problems still in the United States. But median household income rose to $59,039. Now, that's, of course, based on an average household of, I don't know if it's considered 2.2 people per household. This is not individual salaries, right? This is average household income. Most households have more than one income, and it is also the median, not the mean. And in this case, I do believe it's more accurate to say median. Mean would be significantly influenced upward by the very few who earn a lot. And anytime you hear average, it's really important. It's funny. Last week in the class I'm teaching at Boston College, I did a portion of a class on lying with statistics and ways that if you want to be a savvy, informed consumer of news, you need to understand a few specific ways in which numbers can be distorted. And one is the use of the term average anywhere. Anytime you see the word average, you need to be asking, are they using the mean, the median, or less commonly the mode? And very often one is more representative of reality, I guess I would say, than others.
Yeah, we see this a lot. I mean, sometimes you can show raw numbers that support one side of an argument, and you can show percentages which support the other side of the argument.
No doubt.
And there's obviously you need to use the median here, because as the issue of income inequality becomes more and more severe, as the people on the top are hoarding more and more of the wealth, obviously you can't average those in with middle class and poorer Americans.
Yeah, it would create an average mean income that is way, way higher than what would place basically at the 50 percentile mark, which is more what median is telling us. How many, what would you earn where you earn more than half of the people and less than half of the people? Okay, so what does this tell us big picture? Does this tell us we shouldn't be worried about growing inequality? No, not at all. Does this tell us we shouldn't be worried about automation, technological automation? No, it doesn't tell us that. Does it tell us that there has been some great growth in the middle class over the last 40 years? No, this has hit a little peak in 2016, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I read that Steven Mnuchin is considering, if they can get the Trump tax cuts passed, backdating them to January 1st of 2017, meaning that when you file your taxes for this year, if they can get it passed, you would basically, if you qualify for a tax cut under Trump's plan, you would get it for the entire year. What will that do to some of these numbers?
I mean, short note on that, if they have any chance on passing it, I think they really have to target the middle class, because if the Democrats decide to market it as just some tax cut for the rich, no chance of passing then.
Probably not.
It does seem like this is one of the most accurate indicators of the economy, although none is going to be perfect. A lot of times we hear about maybe the stock market doing better than ever, but maybe only half of Americans own stocks, and those that do may just have index funds, 401ks, that sort of thing.
Here's what's deceptive, I think, about median income. And it's not so much that the measure is not accurate, it's that it only represents earned income. And when you talk about one of the greatest sources of inequality, it's that the people who have the most are increasingly or earn much more of their total inflows of money, not from wages and working. And that's where these numbers can become distorted.
Plus, I don't think it takes into account inflation or the cost of living or the fact that health insurance premiums are going up and up.
Right.
And this report does show that we have a record low uninsured rate. It's only at 8.8%.
Well, yeah, when you
better.
mandate people have to get insured. It's so funny. Like, the right uses that as some kind of way to criticize Obamacare. I mean, it's an empirical truth that if you require people to have coverage or pay a fine, you will get more people who have coverage. That's not something to attack. It's just sort of the reality. And the right will say, well, the only reason you have fewer people uninsured is because people have to have insurance or pay a fine. Well, yeah, that's sort of how it was designed, right? Like that's not a criticism, that's the reality. And then we can talk about prices or whatever else.
Well, when it comes to the uninsured rate being lower or the wages being higher, it does look like a good sign on both fronts. And I say this completely unironically, but do you think Donald Trump will take credit for this? Even though these numbers are out of 2016,
maybe.
There's been no shortage of that in the past. Even though he wasn't president at the time, he may turn around and say, yeah, this vindicates my presidency. I'm doing such a great job.
No shortage of people criticizing Obama for things that he had no control over, and it would not at all be surprising. I mean, Trump has already taken credit for, like, the January jobs numbers Trump took credit for, even though, he hadn't done anything, and most of that month he wasn't even president.
Before he was president, he didn't believe the numbers. Now that he is president, he does.
The numbers were totally false, fake, false flag numbers. Yeah, absolutely horrible. Coffee. This has nothing to do with patent Keurigs. If you are a coffee lover, you may find it more difficult to get your daily caffeine
fix?
Yeah, because of global warming. Global warming could cut the portion of the planet, rather the portion of Latin America that can sustain a coffee crop by as much as 88% by 2050, according to a report from scientists earlier this week. So Latin America, biggest coffee producing region of the world. There are some coffee growing areas in Asia and in Africa. They will also be hit, presumably, by changing temperatures. And their predictions are that by 2050, we would see a rise in global temperature of 2.6 degrees Celsius. And that would be a major, major problem for coffee. Yeah. Although, I get that this is not like the biggest problem when it comes to climate change. Severe weather, ocean acidification, increasing the extinction rate of species, animal species, pollution. I'm not doing justice to it, but there's a long list of problems. I actually think that I don't subscribe to this philosophy for a lot of problems, but I do believe that by 2050, we will have figured out how to create artificially indoors the environment we need to grow coffee. Is that crazy?
Yeah. Well, no, you're probably right. It's just something that I think we should put in our back pocket a little bit more. Like with this overarching idea of climate change, there are people who say that, well, by the time it's a significant problem, we'll be off on other planets by then. So what should we really do to stop it? Right. I think we should just kind of leave that on the back burner and try to solve this if we can.
I agree with you. And people who say that they believe science will solve whatever problems climate change creates, you don't have to imagine debunking that. You can debunk it now. People are dying because of pollution now. Look at what's going on in different countries around the world. You already have people dying from more frequent and more severe weather events now, and some fraction of that can be connected to global climate change. So people who say we'll figure it out before it really starts killing people, how many people are you talking about? Because it's already killing people.
Yeah, and so coffee grows a lot better in cooler temperatures, it seems. So as
but not too cold.
Okay, not too cold.
Yeah.
But presumably you'd have to go higher and higher up in the mountains because that's typically where coffee grows.
Sure.
It seems like then the job becomes a little bit more dangerous and that there's less land because obviously if you imagine a mountain, as you go higher and higher, there's less surface area to that mountain.
Not only that, you also have at some point to get the temperature you need, if you have to keep going up, you're not going to have the air will get too thin. In other words, you might have to get to a point where when the temperature is correct, it's otherwise not the right atmosphere.
Yeah, and these jobs are often vulnerable, maybe low paying. So you're already talking about people who are on their last legs with a lot of these stuff. And if they have to adjust in this way too, that could mean jobs lost in addition to us not having as much coffee.
Not only that, well, actually, this reminds me of a lot of what goes on in terms of how cocaine crops, like the coca leaf, how it's approached, and a lot of what might happen with coffee in a completely different sort of scenario and context actually reminds me a little bit of what has happened to coca growers in Colombia, Peru, and other parts of South America.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about sports broadcasting. I only heard about this story a little bit. Were you following this entire Sergio Dip thing?
I didn't watch the Monday Night Football game live, but I heard about it the next day. It's a big story.
If I understand it correctly, Sergio Dip is a new sideline reporter, and the sideline reporter, a convention in sporting events that I find mostly pointless. I genuinely do not care for the sideline reporting. And I know that some people say that there's a sexist element to sideline reporting, that in men's sports with all male broadcasters, they put the sole woman down on the sidelines and feed the woman questions and blah, blah, blah. I'm not taking a gender angle on it right now, although we could talk about that. I just don't care for the sideline reporter thing. Sergio Dip made his debut, and I haven't seen the video, but I guess it was like he was completely out of sorts when he was trying to do his report.
It wasn't as bad as maybe people are playing up to be, but it was just a little bit unconventional. So Monday Night Football is on ESPN every week, and the first game of the year, they actually have two. They have back-to-back.
Yep.
So as you can imagine, you know, the second game, they don't have their best broadcasters, their best sideline reporters.
They didn't send their best.
Yeah. And this is some 29-year-old guy who typically is on ESPN Deportes.
Right, he's doing Spanish commentary. Yeah.
Right. And so he wanted to make a point about how there was two African-American head coaches making their respective debuts on both teams.
Yeah.
And that it was, you know, such a great big moment for them and such a great moment for diversity in the NFL, and that they were having their time of their lives.
Relevant message.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, you know, unconventional maybe from watching a sports game, you'd think, but not a bad message at all. And he just seemed a little bit uncomfortable, didn't really have the delivery that you'd expect from most broadcasters.
Yeah, and he instantly shot to fame. And the NFL is arguably the most aggressive entity at protecting intellectual property rights, and I would not even dream of playing the audio alone from this, but you can find
it on YouTube.
You can find it very easily online. And he instantly shot to fame, and all sorts of, you know, memes, endless posts on Twitter and social media, and questions about whether he was going to be allowed to continue or not, glancing down at notes and up, and very, very uncomfortable. I kind of felt bad for the guy, really.
Well, even if he killed it, he probably wouldn't have gotten a second chance until next year anyway, because like I said, they only do the one Monday Night Football game every week, and I think that cast and crew are all set.
Yes.
But he also he put up this like apologetic Twitter video.
Yeah.
And it just seemed pretty ridiculous. I don't know if he thought that people were laughing at him, where it seemed as if most people were laughing with him.
Yeah, no, I didn't see. I mean, obviously, you're talking about a guy who's normally doing Spanish commentary for soccer, so of course there were anti-Latino, xenophobic comments, but that happens on anything, anytime on the internet, right? That was not the main sort of focus of the criticism. And I find myself caring less and less, and I've mentioned this before, just about all the sidebar going on surrounding the sporting event. Like there are specific sporting events I will watch, and I just want to watch the game. But as I learn more about politics and economics and history and so many other areas of life, I find myself paying less and less attention to sports. And I know this doesn't happen to all people as they get older, but it's happening to me.
Yeah, it has happened to me. I mean, I'm not watching First Take and those ESPN shows anymore.
Right.
But one more comment on this guy. I think it could be a blessing in disguise for him.
Really?
Because now he's a household name.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of like James Damore. We're going to have him on the program next week. He was fired from Google for releasing what they called a document that promoted gender, like perpetuated gender stereotypes or something like that.
Basically he was criticizing the diversity policy of Google.
He was just like some engineer that wasn't really known outside of his own realm, and now he's some superstar.
He went
going
from
on
hacker to gender, I don't even know what to call
expert?
him. Gender expert or something like that. Yeah, anyway, we'll be talking to James Damore, who, by the way, he contacted us saying he's a fan of the show and he wanted to be on. I have no idea if that's true or if he just said, if I say I'm a fan, I'll get on. It doesn't make a difference to me, but I predict it will be an interesting. Okay, that's it for today's bonus show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.